Welcome to the Anarcho Peace Punk Fest. Come on in. There's people all around the back. We're gonna get started with our itinerary here. So come on in. So first up, we have Shawn McDougal from the Community Democracy Project. And they're working to create direct democracy in Oakland. Shawn is also one of the original members of the Anarchist People of Color. So he's here to talk to you about what he's doing. So give him a round of applause.
Thank you for the opportunity to be here. Thanks, Jay. I used to live in a collective, an anarchist collective, anarchist punk collective house. Jay was one of the members there, and it was a good time. So we had a lot of good exchange, a lot of good debates and discussions on political strategy and how to sort of connect culture with political change. And I'm proud to be a part of this event today. Briefly, I want to tell you about how many. I know people are from all over here. How many people live in Oakland? Okay, cool. There's some Oakland people. Great, good. So my message, even though it's not just about Oakland, it's going to be grounded in Oakland, but it'll be relevant for all of us. So one of the things that led me to get involved with the Community Democracy Project was a sense that getting sick of seeing all the bullshit that our enemies do, right? And focusing on the power that they have and not thinking enough about the power that we have was one of the things. And another thing was like, I got to the point where I was like, look, unless we figure out how to get folks who don't see themselves as activists, unless we get folks who don't see themselves as change makers, unless we get folks who are trained to be spectators, to stop being spectators, we're gonna be fucked. Because the forces of the doom and destruction that are destroying the environment, destroying our humanity at every level, they're organized to crush what little pockets of resistance that a few of us are able to build, unless we figure out how to truly build a mass movement. So the question of how to build a mass movement has been fundamental, and the reason why we come together is because we know the power we have by bringing our forces together, right? Humans are really good at thinking short-term individually. We're not so good at thinking long-term. We're not so good at thinking collectively. But the fucking corporations and the state and all the institutions of oppression are really good at their long-term projects. We need to figure out how to be better at our long-term projects. So briefly, the Community Democracy Project got off the ground during Occupy about 7 years ago. And we're working on a campaign to create a people's budget in Oakland. So regular folks all across the city will have neighborhood assemblies, get together and decide how much money goes to police, how much goes to parks, etc. So imagine the changing relationship of the police to the community when the community decides their funding, right? So that's taking real power back. I got to the point, I was arrested at a lot of protests. I did for a lot of different issues, as you can imagine, because a lot of us connect the dots easily between the different issues. And I got to the point where I was tired of reacting to what they do and protesting and saying no. I wanted to say yes. What is our vision? What do we want? And so I'm here to talk about community organizing, because part of community organizing is turning that question to the people and going door to door or talking to people on buses or on street corners or from supermarkets and saying, what do you want to happen in Oakland? What is your vision for the city? If you were in charge, what are some things you like to do? So just today, for example, we're going door to door in the Laurel District as we go all over the city, talking to people. And you'd be amazed, no matter what kind of house or apartment or someone lives in, no matter how they look, most people, once you just scratch the surface a little bit, actually give a fuck. And they actually wish things were fundamentally different, but they feel powerless because we're divided and conquered, as you know. That's the main tool of social control, is divide and conquer. Keep us focused on our individual survival in the matrix and not able to connect the dots between our different realities so we can have a collective struggle. So we have a campaign that we're working on a voter initiative to change the city constitution. so that instead of the mayor and the city council deciding the city budget, we the people will decide. So directly taking power away from the politicians and the lobbyists and the corporate police state, and making the idea of community control, bottom-up control, something that's not just an idea in a book, but something that tens of thousands of people potentially will have the experience of. Because one of the things one of the conclusions we came to from all of our work is that the biggest teacher is experience. We can do all the words and blah, 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 but most people are driven by their experiences, right? You can tell me a nice thing and give me a nice speech, but if my everyday reality is I have a fucking, corporate ass job, I have a fucking authoritarian fucking, situation in terms of how, my school works, whatever it may be, right? If all the institutions I live in are based on a few people deciding for many, then that vision of real grassroots, bottom-up community, empowerment is just going to be a nice set of words. So how do we help people have the experience of participatory decision-making, the experience of bottom-up democracy, the experience of real decision-making and real control? And so that's why we're doing our voter initiative to establish at the local level power over the city budget, but then using that to launch off to how do we stop the prison industrial complex at the state level? Well, most people wish more funding was going to things like healthcare and education and transportation and all the good things that matter in terms of our sustaining life, but they don't feel powerful. But imagine if a city like Oakland started having direct democracy at its local level, then other cities will start saying, wait, in California, we can do the same thing. And eventually you can say, well, maybe the state budget should be decided by we the people. And then eventually we can stop the military industrial complex at the federal level, because eventually people will say, wait, people in California are deciding the state budget, why don't we decide the federal budget, right? Why do we have lobbyists deciding, $800 billion per year goes to the military, as you guys know, right? We're fighting over crumbs at every level, right? And so I'm preaching to the choir, you know how fucked up shit is. The question is, how do we get beyond it? The answer is community organizing. We gotta talk to each other, talk to our neighbors, get out of our boxes. It's challenging, whatever. Every time I go out, it's like, okay, I gotta get ready, you gotta be willing to sort of hear no's. People are like, oh, I'm too busy, I'm watching the game, whatever, I don't have time to talk, I'm focused on my individual survival. You get through those layers, but then you meet the gems. You meet beautiful people wherever you go who really wanna connect the dots. We are the ones we've been waiting for. A politician is not going to save us. A superhero is not going to save us. A movie star, a basketball star, a rock star is not going to save us, right? So whatever we can do to figure out how to create the structures that allow us to save ourselves, and not individually, that's capitalism. Capitalism is about individual salvation, right? But collectively, right? So how do we build collective structures that last longer than a day, that last longer than a temporary autonomous zone, right? How do we build real institutions and real power? I encourage you to check out the Community Democracy Project. I have flyers right here. If there's any questions or comments, I had no idea. I've been running around all day. I had no idea what I was going to say today. So I'm kind of rambling. But if there's any questions or comments while I'm up here, it'll take a couple of minutes, because I tend to be more dialogical, because I think collective knowledge, I'm not good at monologues, because really the wisdom happens through interaction, right? Just like in an ecosystem, we connect the dots between our different pieces of truth, and then a greater truth emerges. So if there's any reactions, questions, comments, I'd love to hear those. Yeah. Oh. Our voter initiative will make it so that all residents of Oakland, irregardless of immigration status, as long as you live in Oakland and you're 16 years of age and older, will have a say in the budget. You will be able to decide how much money the police get. Right now, the biggest single department in the Oakland City budget is a $1.2 billion per year budget. The biggest single department is the police. I'm sure there's lots of great ideas out there. I know there's great ideas, because we talk to people all the time about alternatives for how to use our resources at the local level to create, a sustainable, peaceful community, as opposed to authoritarian power over violent forms of so-called safety or security, right? All right, you got something to say? Yeah, cool. Here.
Nothing to say. He wants a flyer. He doesn't want a
Oh, you want a flyer? Okay, cool. Right on. And I also have a sign-up sheet. Actually, oh, here's the flyer. Thanks for.
I don't want to plug.
Oh no. This is this structure, whatever. Whatever. Right? This is a show, whatever. But like dialogue. I have a sign-up sheet right here if you're interested in being on our mailing list. My comrade Kyle is here. And I also have flyers. We'll make sure those go out.
How can community organizing support the arts?
How can community organizing support the arts is a good question, right? Well, one of the things that, there's multiple things. One is that just channeling funds to support local artists, right? $1.2 billion per year in the city of Oakland. It's lots of money that's not going to things that actually sustain the arts, that sustain creativity, that sustain our power together. That's one thing. Another thing is just creating the space where people come together, right? All kinds of creative solutions. One of the things that I did when I was doing community organizing work around the time that me and Jay were in that co-op house is we created a mutual aid resource directory in our neighborhood. Just went door to door talking to people. And you realize there's all this wisdom and intelligence and power that people have, but they don't know how to bring it together, right? So a big part of our initiative will be these neighborhood assemblies where people just get to know their neighbors and talk to each other about the issues, so they can start saying, wait, you have a band and you have a space and whatever, you have this and that, and bringing those resources together, but not in a sort of in a way that's ongoing, right? So that you build the culture, so it's not just a one-off. Oh, isn't this nice? We have First Friday or whatever, but it's like an ongoing engagement. So there's multiple ways. Funds and connecting the dots between people. All right, cool. Well, thanks very much. Take care.